Oh, my sweet Lord. Oh, Facebook world. I used to do this a lot. I mentioned that the other day. And I figured I'd do it again. My memories came up, and there was a video, I guess 5 years ago, of me and Wells drinking carbonated water and beer at my house and doing just this. And I realized that for a long time I would use this to make sense of some things that I was doing, whether it was just stuff I was thinking about or just sort of auditioning ideas by saying them out loud and seeing if they had any kind of merit to them, more than just me playing the scenario, as it were, over and over in my head, thinking it may or may not be a good idea. And also, in some of those old videos, there was a lot of like going through boxes of things, videos or books or whatever else. And that sort of was also a nice hallmark and way for me to process whether something I was doing was like really necessary or whatever else. And the things lately that I have been thinking at length about include spam and junk mail, which isn't like a huge or important thing, but I was really, I don't know, upset's not the right word, but I get very agitated about what it does to a person to constantly receive those things. And maybe making this a semi-plea to companies or people who spam the living shit out of, just literally anyone who has an address or whose name got sold to a, contact, provider or whatever else in the Valley. Some of my good friends work for some of these companies. I will not call you out by name. I just know I still love and respect you very much, even though your business practices sometimes drive me fucking nuts, because I don't know how many times I need to get a postcard from one of 300 companies in the Roanoke Valley. They're like, hey, houses in your area, you want to sell your house real fast? Give us a call. Let's talk about selling your house. And and sometimes you call them and they're like, yeah, we'll give you $100,000 for your house in your $300,000 neighborhood. It's like, we get it. If those things were a necessity, it's predatory at best. I don't know. I just don't like those practices, and getting a lot of spam from different businesses and practices like that. What it does is it takes away some of the authenticity of your life and name and your home that you put meaning in, because it becomes the target and subject of a lot of unsolicited and unwanted crap. And ultimately what that does for your brand, if you are one of those people, is that it takes away all of their credibility. They may make a lot of money, and I hope those companies and people make a lot of money and everybody's fine and happy and good in the world and whatever else. At the same time, I wouldn't mind so much if you did quick sales on houses where people needed money fast, in dire straits or in desperate needs, if I didn't get the crap in the mail all the time. And it's not just the quick sell houses and whatever else. I mean, it is anything. It's realtors. It is lawn care. It is anything that they can address to a resident or a weird misspelled version of your name. That stuff just has to stop. I've been staging an apartment for some photographs that we're doing, and outside the apartment is a literal molding stack of yellow pages from Verizon that no one asked for, that in 2021 no one needs or wants. All right? And what that does for Verizon by essentially spamming people with books at this point, is it really takes away from their brand. What does it say about Verizon as a company that provides a cell phone service or a high-speed internet or anything remotely technologically progressive if their constant offering to you is an unsolicited method of saying it's not really about getting in touch with people as much as it is a way to say fuck trees, right? Because really, what good is a phone book in 2021 when everyone has a cell phone or a computer? And I get that cell phones can go out and emergencies can happen and whatever else, but I've never had an emergency where I was like, quick, someone give me a phone book so I know who to call. And I love old things. You're going to see here in a second that I thrive on old crap, but phone books are an old and dated technology that is no longer necessary. And to persist in those models and to persist in sending people physical mail that really has no purpose is the worst. It's the worst for your brand, and it's bad for everyone's souls. Because again, as I mentioned before, it takes away from the authenticity of your life. Everyone remembers being a kid and hopefully getting some kind of letter from their grandparents or something in the mail from their school or whatever else, and feeling special because that thing was for you, right? The thing that happens to be addressed to you, whether it's a package or a birthday card or, you name it, those things are for you and they're unique to you and they imbue your life with a sense of meaning. I could not think of something that is in such a dire opposite scenario than getting unsolicited mail. And the percentages on actually how much that works, I think only exist because someone accidentally assumed that it actually was for them. I don't think the turnaround on those things and the result of those things are because they actually work and the margins then pay for themselves. I think, if anything, most of them are by sheer accident. And like I said, what they do is they take all the magic from receiving something personal and they suck the life out of it. And they make you hate their brands. And they make you feel, even if you do need them, even if it's like one of those weird, things full of coupons, even if you do end up using them, you feel weird about yourself for having to have opened that thing and relied on it. And I hate it. So please, if you're one of those companies out there who sends unsolicited crap to people, if you buy a list of phone numbers or email addresses or home addresses and then use them to send out unwanted business stuff, just stop. Save that damn money and use it on something effective, right? I'm not going to pat myself on my back for what my company does and what I do for them, but I will say that there are a lot of companies out there. Oh, I saw a great one. It's a Black Forest. I don't remember the name of it. They make fruit snacks. I have some in the closet I got for my kids because of this. They said the average commercial costs $3 million, and instead of spending $3 million in a commercial, we spent $1,000 on this one and donated the other bit of the $3 million to planting trees. Done. I'm sold. I'm in for good. And the best way to sell anything is at this point in 2021, and I have to keep reminding the world that it is 2021. Stop doing things that were a necessity in 1950, right? In 2021, the best way you can sell your brand is through authenticity and through being a responsible company. Sending out millions of phone books to people who don't want them is as irresponsible and awful for the environment as they are worthless. It does nothing but screw up your brand, Verizon. So there's that soapbox. The adjacent soapbox to that, and I'm only going to talk about this very briefly, is the Roanoke Gas Company, for example, is upping their rates by 68% because of supply chain issues, apparently. Even though they've been saying they're going to up their rates for I don't know how long now. The reality is that the Roanoke Gas Company, similar to AT&T, could actually offer all of their customers much lower rates, even if gas prices get all crazy because of the weather and whatever else, if they didn't invest money in things like pipelines, right? When it comes to spam, I called AT&T the other day, and I was like, yo, it's a good thing I have an unlimited plan with you guys because most of my calls are spam at this point. I don't know what I have a a phone provider for if it isn't also to protect my phone number and keep me from unwanted calls? So what are you guys doing about that? What can we do about this? And the very kind but patient person at AT&T explained to me that, oh, there's nothing we can do about this. And I get that, like, that guy personally can't help me. He's just a customer service guy. He's just doing his job. So I didn't give him any help. But this is the sort of underlying grossness of all this. And again, I can tell he's given, it probably wasn't a script, but they have guidelines for what to say when people ask about these things. The first thing he did was refer me to an app that they have. And so at my own leisure, anytime I get a spam call, I can report them to AT&T. Or if I really want AT&T's help with it, I can pay a monthly subscription fee for this, like, a premium version of their app to keep junk mail from coming my way. Kelly Foy, hello. Happy almost birthday. Happy push day. I was thinking about you guys all day. But I can pay AT&T for this app so that the service I pay them for can be more spam free, which doesn't seem like a very good option. And I explained this to the guy. I said, why do I have to pay you guys more money to do the thing that is just sort of basic, phone services that people would expect out of their provider? Because, well, all this sort of has changed recently. The government changed something, and now you don't have to, like, register your phone. Well, and I was like, okay, cool. What do we do about that? He goes, well, if you wanna call your congressman, or if you want to call, your state senator or whatever, that's the only way something could get done. And it occurred to me at that goddamn moment that AT&T is telling me to lobby on their behalf, while just a little while ago, AT&T was spending millions and millions of dollars lobbying not on my behalf, but to end net neutrality. And those are the kind of things that you have to, I think, ultimately as consumers, we have to hold people accountable for. Whether it's the Roanoke Gas Company, whether it's AT&T. And again, on that whole spam train, Jesus Christ, think of all the money Verizon would save if they didn't print those phone books. Think about the goodness and the likelihood that I would switch my provider from a kind of evil giant like AT&T to Verizon, who's a slightly less evil giant, if they said, hey guys, we know you kind of all hate those damn phone books, and we're not going to send any out this year unless you specifically request one. And instead, for every one that you don't want or whatever else, we'll plant a tree. I would switch to Verizon right then and there. It didn't have to be planting a tree, but it would be some kind of opposite thing of wasting my life and time and a ton of resources and energy on making something that no one wants. And then again, as a marketing tool, is completely ineffective. So that's my thoughts on spam. Thanks for bearing with me. The tiniest other little square-shaped soapbox that I have to go along with this is my friend Denise was hoping that I was going to be here on the other day explaining what my problem is with houses that I think are just boxes or they're just squares. And Denise is a very good friend, and she often sends me and Jessica listings of houses that are near their house because, like good friends, I'm the exact same way. I want all my friends to live like right there and right behind me. And anytime I want to hang out with my friends, we all basically live in the same compound cul-de-sac together. But part of the problem and one of the hardest things that I've been running into living in the city, which I love, is the houses. They're four squares. I live in a four square. I love four squares. And those aren't really what I'm referring to as boxes, because at least four squares have a porch or some shape to them, or kind of that multi-tiered pagoda looking, design to them. I'm referring, and I'm sorry if any of you live in one of these homes, all the colonial brick houses that litter this city that are literally just a square cube with a roof on them. Sometimes the brick's painted, sometimes it's not, but it's really just a flat facade with a door and some windows on it. And I don't know, it's stupid. Houses should be completely utilitarian and just serve a function. And on some very basic level, I think that's true. But there's also something really wonderful about coming home when you own cats, right? And your cats are there, and they're like, oh, hey, Will, like, we're here, we're glad you're home, we're going to make you feel this certain way. And your house should do the same thing. And if your house does nothing but go, I'm a box, and you live in me, like, what's the point? My house is a cluttered mess, but my brain is also a cluttered mess. And what those things sort of reflect in your design aesthetic and your thoughts and choices, especially if you're someone like me who thinks way too much about art and TV and like other nonsense, I feel like those things represent something about you. And the last thing I feel like represents me is just a plain old boring box, or at least I'd like to think so. It's not just a plain boring box. And so Denise, last tiny little square-shaped soapbox is that plain old boring boxes are just colonials, and they're everywhere. And I get that they're cheap and easy to build, and there's something like very structurally sound about a cube. But God, enough. So that's my thing on boxes. Last and probably longest thing this evening are... I'd like to say this started during the pandemic, but it definitely got worse during the pandemic, and it has to do with the researching and looking at a lot of things for way too long online. And those things also tend to overlap with some stuff I'm already clearly into. None of these things very often happen in a vacuum. But they do get exasperated by certain... Pandemic was one of them when it came to researching and looking at stuff online too much. Recently, a friend of mine was like, we should have a thing called Film Friends. We should shoot on film again, since we all, started out at some point as photographers with real cameras, went to digital photographers and videographers and have a ton of really nice gear to do that. And then we just sort of ended up using our phones for everything, and it made me very lazy as someone who makes video and as someone who makes images. And a lot of my job now relies on my ability to take interesting photographs and to photograph things again. And one of the things that I found over the years I started doing thanks to digital was I would shoot and figure out which one was right. If you're shooting a gun, it's the equivalent of spray and pray. And it doesn't really do much for you as a photographer. It sort of makes you lazy if you don't think about your shutter speed, for instance, anymore. Then you just shoot the same photo 5 different times with different shutter speeds to get the right one. And so when some of my friends the other day were like, hey, let's get some film again, and we'll all shoot a roll of the same film, and then we'll get together and look at our photos. It was a really great idea. Film Friends. They even had a great name. But what it did was it made me get out all my old cameras. And then it also made me start thinking about what different, especially non-mechanical and maybe slightly electronic cameras do in terms of the ways that they affect the image and take certain images. The difference between like plastic and glass lens and point and shoot cameras and rangefinders and the whole gambit. So now I don't know how many cameras are sitting in front of me right now. There's probably at least 10. Most of them I can safely say I already owned and happily owned. And I wanted to talk about some of them tonight in case you're like me and you want to waste an incredible amount of money. It's actually not an incredible amount of money, but if you want to waste a lot of money understanding which old 35mm camera you should get for yourself. I say this also because my medium format camera just died, which I loved very much. And so these are kind of like my surrogate cameras, and I think I have to I don't know why I have to do this, but I have to get a lot of things and really understand them to kind of make a next logical progression in whatever I'm doing. So right now, since it's back to like doing a lot of digital photography for work, I have to re-understand all the things that I once enjoyed about analog photography or emulsion photography, as it were, and use that to kind of build off the next phase of things. So we're going to look at a lot of cameras tonight. Starting with, this isn't my oldest camera. I don't know where some of my original cameras were that I was using between, I don't know, I would say 13 and 20. But this was a camera of my mother's. It doesn't have the lens on it. It's a really neat. I like these lens caps because they looked like checkers. I don't know. But this old Canon Eos Rebel, it was a 35 millimeter camera. It's a great little kick around camera. It was the first camera that could do automatic settings and had the digital controls on it that I felt really good about when I was a kid and didn't really know anything about photography, and I was in photography classes and whatever else. This camera was also responsible for me and Jonathan's very famous, we had to do a photography presentation in photography at one point, and we did a series of photos called A Day on the Trampoline with Andre the Giant. How nice. And because of kind of the controls on this film, you could do a lot of forced perspective, or controls on this camera, you could do a lot of forced perspective stuff. So we had a little figure of Andre the Giant that we would put in the foreground, so he would appear very big, and then Jonathan or me would be in the background on the trampoline, and it would look like we were both the same size jumping on this trampoline together. Which is probably my favorite thing I ever shot on this, and it's also one of the things I've lost over the years. I unfortunately left those negatives in the trunk of a car that leaked, and they all got pretty much destroyed. But the memories are still there and worth it. This camera now, you could probably find somewhere pretty cheap. And if it's still all mechanically sound, the only thing I don't love about this one is it's a lot of plastic. This is a really good 35 millimeter camera. I will end up teaching probably Lillian how to shoot on one very similar to this that I'll get to in a minute. But I still love this camera. My mom used it forever. I use it forever. God, this camera is at least 25 years old, and it's still tough. And for that reason, I like Canons a lot. One of the wish list items that I always had on my Canon list was this A1. This thing is a tank. It was one of the first real automatic cameras with, it has a light meter, and it's a lot of other rangefinders, but it had this auto winder and could just do a whole lot more than any of the cameras. This is sort of like the Mark IV equivalent of the 5D in terms of older Canons and rangefinder bodies. It has a really incredibly hard and solid metal case still. I have been shooting on this recently. The light meter's not so great in it anymore, unfortunately, but this thing is still a beast, and it still produces a lot of really beautiful images. And I think some of them are on some Facebook folder I have. And this camera made me sort of start really wanting to get back into film. I bought this a number of years ago from that amazing store, which is destined to what I'm going to turn into as an old man. That one in Blacksburg, that John's Cameras and Records. And as you can guess by the title, they just sell cameras and records. And the guy gave me this at a really pretty decent rate. It's an FD lens mount, and those FD lenses are a lot of fun because there's a very like almost poetic, romantic struggle in using some of them. They can produce some of the most beautiful and like sharp images in the world, and they also can trick you into making you believe they can do stuff they really can't. A lot of them feel soft that should not be soft. Especially the lower f-stops. So I have 3 lenses for that now, and I like them all, but really the wider ones I think are better. And in my sort of like need to understand all of a series of things, I started looking into all the other Canons that I was reading about and wanted to know more about. My background is really in video more than film, and so this thing really appealed to me. This weird ass kind of sci-fi camera that Canon came out with in the 90s called the Fe2. This is the 135 model. I guess this is supposed to be like their better model, but I think they're both equally as silly. They look like video cameras, and straight up from the strap on the side to the way that there's an electronic zoom on the top. I don't think I have a battery in this one, but it opens up. It's got a zoom lens on it. The photos in it look exactly like you think they would. And this thing is going to be fun to play around with. I have a bunch of cameras that simulate the effects and the looks of different film stocks and sometimes different camera styles. But again, for $8, it's worth grabbing something like this to really make an authentic technical decision, I guess you could say, for your concept. Because it's hard to replicate the looks of cameras like these. And they're fun to play with too. I mean, the battery costs more for this now than the actual camera, so it's hard to sort of argue with not getting those things. But again, the triumph of something old like this, and again, it is different from this A1, which again, this will still produce a world-class image on 35 millimeter. This one, not so much, but it does have an aesthetic to it, which is almost impossible to match. And it's just fun to like play around with a silly thing like this too, and have it as part of a collection of other silly things. But that also got me interested in, I have very fond memories of all those. I guess they're half of 35, so 12 and 16 millimeter kind of roll films. Those little point and shoot cameras that had those little canister things of film that were all in one. But no one really makes that film anymore, and I didn't want to mess around with those, and so I got a very similar body style camera to that after reading about it, and that is the Canon Snappy. I don't know, this thing is fun. It's silly. This one is the more deluxe version of it, if you can consider there being a deluxe version of it. It has, and I think it's deluxe because it has autofocus on it. Yeah, it's fully automatic. But again, it's a fun little thing. It makes me think about how and what I can shoot with a camera like this, because it does have very specific limitations to how practical it is. The flash does not work on this anymore, obviously, so you can only use it in certain types of light. But again, it's a cheap little camera that provides you with a real, a very different look than I can get out of most things. I shot some black and white film on this last week that I should have tomorrow in Photo USA. And I'll put those up in that Film Friends folder to see what that's like. And that's also another one of those things. I shoot something on my phone, I shoot something on my digital cameras. I know exactly what it looks like the second I take it. Like getting something worthwhile in the mail. There is something great about spending a week shooting 36 pictures on a thing like this, and 36 considered pictures, having them go off, and having to wait a few days before you get those things back. What is it? Longing, the heart, whatever, longing is heart's desire, whatever the saying is. It is the truth for a 35 millimeter film. And if any of you are interested, I would love to do a larger Film Friends group where we all, it's a virtual show. It's a, whatever the case is, it's nostalgia, Wayne, for sure. but we'll shoot on film again and kind of see what turns out, because it is fun. It's the chance to it, you know, it's like playing the lottery with art sometimes, and I love that idea. So then I decided if I had the Rolls Royce of old Canon cameras, and I did really like the Canon Rebel that I grew up with, I was going to get, I guess it would be the Mercedes of the more modern 35mm Canons. And I picked this thing up for $10. It weighs probably 5 pounds. It's incredible. It's the Canon Eos 650. Another, again, it's mostly automatic. Most of the controls can be set to automatic, but again, this is the 90s equivalent of a Canon 5D. And I can't wait to shoot on this thing too. The great thing about these guys, these modern Canons that I own, is that they use the EF lens mount that I use on all my other cameras that I have on the 5D that I just bought, or the for my GH5, basically everything I have is Canon lenses or EF lenses, so I can use all those lenses with these. And this thing, again, it just rarely do I spend so little money on something and get something back and go, oh my god, like, I know this was $10, I know it's old and it's not something that's very practical anymore, but it feels like I should have paid a lot more money for this guy. And I'm excited about using it because, again, the pictures aren't going to be a ton different from this, but it is part of the whole process is thinking about a camera, its character, and the quality in which it takes pictures and where it just basically takes you mentally. So in that regard, I'm very excited about messing around with the 650 because, again, it feels like a little tank. It feels like you're doing something important with this thing, even if you really aren't. But again, $10. $10 in the case. I think this would be a great camera too. If anybody wants to shoot film, doesn't know what to get, and wants a really, I can't think of a more solid camera than that 650, especially after getting one. I read a little bit about it, and man, that thing is just gorgeous. The last one sort of in that category is, again, this was a Goodwill find, and I probably paid $5 for this. It's a Nikon Fe2. It's a great little rangefinder with, I guess it's got a 50mm. What is it, a 1.4? Jesus, no, it's a 1.8. Lens on it. It's a nifty 50 that everybody needs, and it's I guess the idea was 50mm is as close to what you see with your eye as you can get, although I sort of think that it's more closer to 35. We just have a little bit of tunnel vision, but yeah. Again, picked it up at Goodwill, probably for nothing. And this camera's a beast, and this is exactly the kind of camera, if you want to learn photography on, that's fantastic for, because again, there's a bit of automated controls to it, but really what these cameras more than anything else force you to do, the same with the Canon F1, the trick of all photography is balancing your f-stop, which is how small or wide the aperture is on the lens, with the shutter speed. And the shutter opens and closes, and the longer it opens, the more light it lets in. The less time it's open, the less light it lets in. And it's ISO now, but the ASA, how sensitive your film is. So the more sensitive it is, the more noisy and grainy and crappier it looks. That's still true with digital cameras. The slower your shutter speed is, the more motion blur you're going to get, and the faster it is, you can basically freeze things in slow motion. Your f-stop really controls your depth of field, right? Again, you can let a lot of light in if you need it, but whatever it's focused on is going to be in focus, and the rest of it's going to be blurred out. So again, it's balancing those three things. your film sensitivity, your shutter speed, and your aperture. So the easy thing with digital cameras now is that it's a variable ISO, right? You can set the ISO to anything. You can set it to automatic. You can set almost every aspect of the camera to automatic. You're locked into whatever your ISO or your ASA is on a film camera based on the type of film you have. And again, that provides. I have, and this is an amazing thing. This is going to make it, if you like cameras, this makes a lot of sense. The ASA on this Canon goes down to 6, which means there's an ISO 6 film out there, which is incredible. Right now I have a ISO 13 that I'm going to shoot some on soon, and that's incredibly low. But also this one goes up to an ISO of 12,800. So somewhere at some point in time, there was a 12,800 ISO film, which is nuts. I don't even know what you would use that for. It's bananas to me. It's the same with some of the newer cameras that have insane sensors on them with insane amounts of ISO, or insane ISO. So again, with having cameras like these, though, you are forced to really consider those 3 factors every time you take a photograph or want to take a photograph in a way that just isn't a thing with your iPhone. I mean, you see, like, when I'm moving constantly, the camera is compensating for the amount of light or lack of light. Just the color adjusted to it. All those kind of considerations are made for you. And while you can mess with them a little bit on your phone or on most digital cameras, it really takes away the critical thinking that most people get lazy about, myself especially. So again, it is sort of taking away that having taken that away from myself, I guess it's about getting back to it. The next couple are really more toy cameras, but I find them extremely useful because, again, what they do is they're like some of the they're a bit like the Snappy, which makes me think about the application of them and when and how I can use them. One I had for a long time, and it was this Polaroid Milo. I remember taking this thing to Robbie's wedding, which was it 12 years ago? 18 years ago? It was a long time ago. And using this to take, these basically take the small Polaroid pictures, I guess that really only, is it Fuji makes now? Those little business card size ones. And taking pictures of everybody trying on their suits for the wedding. This is a fun little camera. I have a lot of Polaroid cameras. I'm not going to bore you with all of them. They made a lot of useful things because I didn't have a dark room, right? I used a lot of photographs and larger paintings and collages that I made, and Polaroid had a 600 film that was black and white, that once it sort of developed itself and you pulled it out. Hey, Wells, hey, buddy. I was just talking about you earlier about how my thing came up, and it was like 5 years ago. Me and you were sitting at this kitchen table, cursing, drinking beer and water. So I decided to get back on the horse. And guys, if you have not seen Wells's Twitch stream, Wells, your Twitch stream borderlined on a religious experience for me last night. It was fucking great. I actually spent a long time trying to explain it to Bo this afternoon, being like, I don't know, I sort of know things about Twitch, but I don't really know. Apparently I don't know anything because that stuff was amazing and yada, yada, yada. So, God, I'm psyched about the stuff you sent me earlier and where all that stuff's going. But we were here like 5 years ago, and so I decided, I was like, oh yeah, man, I'm gonna do, because I had all this stuff laying on my table, I'm gonna do some stuff tonight on all these cameras. But that Polaroid one that used the kind of Fuji, I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of that film. Anyway, it's the little film. Lomography. Yeah, that company. We do go Hardwells, and I miss you too. We'll get let's get vaccines and do some more of these. They make a lot of neat stuff. The curious thing about a lot of their products are you can find them sometimes really cheap if someone doesn't know what they are, or you can find them like at a clearance bin at Barnes & Noble, which is where I found this one. Oh, yes, you get your second one the 15th. Man, I was supposed to get one today, and then they realized that they had signed everyone up for the second round, but nobody had the first round, and so they canceled it. So now I'm back on my my COVID wait list. But hopefully soon. But yeah, the Lomography company, they make a lot of really good 35 millimeter film still. That 13 ISO film I have, they make. So I'm excited about that stuff. This guy, again, got it on clearance at, I don't know, Barnes & Noble, probably like 25 to 30 bucks. And it's a neat little semi-manual camera for doing those small Polaroids, or I guess the Fujifilm ones. For a lot of reasons. This one, like all the Lomography stuff, is photography plus toy camera. So this one's got a setting to do multiple exposures, which can be a lot of fun. This was also a real fun camera to play around with my kids with, because again, the multiple exposure, it has different settings for the different type of light you're in. You can basically create your own light with it also and adjust accordingly. And again, you make these little bizarro experimentation exposures, and some of them are duds, some of them are great. But again, that's the magic of this little guy. I think you can pick these up for like 75 to 100 bucks used now, or new sometimes if you find them in the right place. But these guys are a lot of fun because again, they kind of skate the line between a toy camera and a manual camera based on some of the controls that you have over how you make exposures with these. And then finally, like the end of my like toy camera stuff. These are ones that I've had for a while. Not this one necessarily. I did have a Diana camera before this. It's a fun, again, plastic. It's like a Holga camera. This one uses medium format film, which is curious because you can get a lot of detail out of a crazy thing. So sometimes it works, although it's a little expensive to shoot that on it. But so then I did get the back for this guy to use that same Fuji little fun film with. I don't know why. I don't know. I had a stroke at one point, or I'm just old. But anyways, this one now does Polaroids also, and it's a lot of fun. And again, because you do have a little bit more control over the type of image you can make and produce with it. It is a little kind of wonky, and sometimes it turns out a lot differently than you think and takes some adjusting, but it is a fun camera. It's a fun film camera that also doubles as a Polaroid now because of the back on it. And you get a Diana camera for like next to nothing if you're looking in the right places. The first lomography camera that I got was this little guy, which is a 35 millimeter fisheye. There are no focus controls in this. There are no ISO controls. There's no control in this other than, I don't even think there's a control for the flash. I think either the flash works or it doesn't work. Based on, I don't know what, oh no, you can turn the flash on and off. And that's it. And so this is another one of those cameras where you sort of have to think about when and where you can use it. This camera is really great for taking Beastie Boys looking photos of your kids on a playground. It is a lot of fun. I used to take this thing to Fun Fest with me, and I would carry it around in my back pocket and occasionally shoot pictures of people on stage, because the lights on stage are really bright and it worked really great. This is not a good camera for anywhere dark or anything else. But again, those considerations with these things are fun. When and where you can use a certain type of camera is great. And again, gets you thinking about, again, the different kinds of aesthetics or the different like technical considerations of those things. My final camera for this evening is, again, one of my favorite ones. I've had it, I don't know for how long. I've easily had it 25 years plus. It doesn't have a name brand. I think I probably got it in the gift shop of an art museum, if I had to guess. But it's this little, uses 35mm film. It's a camera that basically the shutter speed goes across these four things. So when, I think the original idea of this camera was you could do those kind of like mulberry photos where it's, if I'm jumping up in the air, the first one is me on the ground, the second one is me going up, the third one is me in the air, and the fourth one is me landing, right? It's really almost next to impossible to time anything like that on this camera because it is such a little tiny piece of plastic with not a very reliable shutter speed in it. But with that said, I found a bunch of really neat ways to use this camera over years and years and years. My favorite one was taking pictures of things on television. The camera is as accurate as you think this viewfinder would be on it, right? Like, you have as much luck kind of assuming you know where the lens is and just kind of pointing in that direction. If you're shooting something on TV, though, you can be relatively sure, like with this, my phone here, that if I have this kind of lined up right there, I'm going to be getting enough light into here. Similarly, if it's a television, it is enough light, or should be enough light, depending on what you put in your camera. And so what I would do is I would set up, because I don't know, I had overly complicated ideas when I was younger about image making. And so what I would do is thinking that this is like an odd motion picture thing, like, you know, because it is a sequence of 4 photos. I would set up these scenes using a video camera, feed it into a television, and then take a picture of the television with this, except I wouldn't have the subjects move at all, which sort of defeats the purpose. But I was, of course, like, everyone will see this and understand what the photo is, and no one did. But what it did do was it produced a really specific and interesting image. And when you're taking a picture of a television, because of that slight curve on the television, older televisions anyways, with this, it looked like you were taking the picture of a subject from almost slightly different angles, but it was all in the same photo together. So again, if we're talking about ISO, your f-stop, and your shutter speed being the holy trinity of camera decisions, my foremost holy trinity, which when it comes to all these different cameras and why to use them and why you even need them, is again that formal, technical, and conceptual considerations. And all of these guys, and all the different things that all these different cameras can do in different ways, inform that sort of technical and formal decision about your image making. And then it's just that super easy concept part where you go, shit, I got a fisheye. What do I do with a fisheye now? And the answer usually is always make a skate video. But again, it informs if I want something to be funny or otherworldly or whatever, you know, a fisheye is going to give you that kind of, that domed, that Busta Rhymes music video look, right? So if I want something to feel cartoonish, I'm going to use a wider lens and an interesting thing like this. But then again, I'm going, okay, well then it's film. What does film say about that, the subject or the image or the concept that I'm trying to get across? And so, okay, it's wide, ultra wide, and we're using film, and you can start just piling those things up. And sometimes it helps you with the concept, and other times you have a concept and you reverse engineer it. But again, all these different cameras serve these kind of interesting, I don't know, surrogates, as it were, to just thinking about those things and not having to, I don't know, reverse engineer things in post or overwork them to death in Photoshop, which I don't. You know, at 40, I'm finally that old man who just wants to get away from all that stuff. So those are the cameras I've been obsessively buying lately. And, you know, that's really all I got. It's fucking 8:30. Drink some more seltzer water and watch that incredibly nerdy but specific to Will Slary and Carter and some of my other friends' taste, that documentary on Japan on Netflix. Which, let's just talk about it for a second. Documentaries on Japan that feature historians. What I learned so far from episode 1 is that it doesn't matter if you're Japanese or British or Australian or American or whatever. Japanese historians all sort of look the same. And based on the amount of, I don't know, information that I rattled off about the Tokugawa government and empire and dynasty to Jessica last night while we were watching it, proves that I was just a hair's breadth away from being one of those kind of fluffy Japanese historians. Had, I don't know, my ADD had not been so active, and my inattentiveness to history been, or history as a whole had existed. So that's a fun show. Wrapping up American Gods, which is, it exists. I like it. It's fine. And WandaVision. I mean, I guess I couldn't have named 3 more like nerdy shows for that I'm into, but WandaVision wrapping up also. No spoilers, but it's fine. It definitely didn't start out. It's definitely not ending in the Twin Peaks place that I wanted it to when it started out, but I'm not mad at it either. I think it's a good step for Marvel. That's all I got. All right, guys. If any of you want to borrow a camera or shoot on film, do it. Go to Photo USA, grab some film, grab a camera, and go have fun. And we could have an entire Zoom party if you want to. We could do a Film Friends where everybody shows their pictures. You can look at them beforehand, or you can do like we do and look at them for the first time together with a group. That's always fun. And then there's something, again, it's the opposite of spam. You get something exciting and semi-expected and something that gives, I don't know, relevance to what you're doing, and not just, I don't know, if you're like me, I have 50 million photos on my phone that I'm never going to look at again because I'm overwhelmed by the amount of them. The 36 photos I took the other day on this camera, I can remember all of them now. They all are maybe a little staged, but again, the posed pictures of my kids with this camera are going to stick with my brain a lot longer than the 4 million that go on my iPhone. So think about doing that sometime. It's fun. It's not the cheapest thing on earth, but again, there's something to it. And I think, like I was saying about marketing, like I was saying about things that you give people and create for people, authenticity is the new luxury. It's the new key. It's the new way of feeling good about anything. So authentic photos are fun. If you guys want to do Film Friends, let me know. Or leave stuff in the comments. That's the thing to do, right? Tell me about your favorite film things. About taking photography in high school. Here's a thing also. I don't know if we can get a good... Do you guys see how my thumbnails are all weird and bent? And I have my fingers, the ones that aren't stained from opening oranges, are sort of the same way. They have these divots in them. They say not to put your hand in fixers and any developing chemicals and all that stuff for years when I was in photography in high school and college. And it turns out there's a reason you don't put your hands in chemicals every day for a long time. And my nails started doing this weird thing, and I never really put it together that it was those chemicals until I realized it's only these 6 digits. And the reason it's those 6 digits is because I went like this into the stop bath, into the developer, into the fixer, over and over and over, and then never thought anything of it. But man, yeah, what a time to be alive. Just playing with chemicals, taking photos of you and your buddy on a trampoline with Andre the Giant. Nostalgia. So, that's all I got. Hope you guys have a lovely evening. Thanks for listening to me rant and looking at my cameras. And I'll talk to all of you soon. Goodbye. Goodbye.